Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a comparison between the Microsoft Surface Pro 7 and the Surface Pro X. Now, the X just launched a few days ago. The Surface Pro 7, on the other hand, has been out since the last week of October. And even though these machines look a lot alike, even though they both run a full version of Windows 10, which should mean they're PCs, even though they're both pitched by Microsoft as tablets that can replace your laptop, the only device here that can replace your laptop is the Surface Pro 7, which is the whole lineage of the entire product line of the Surface Pro. The Pro X, on the other hand, is really a competitor for things like the iPad Pro or the Galaxy Tab S6, even though, again, it is a Windows 10 machine. Why, you may be asking? Well, the reason is very simple. We have a Qualcomm SQ1 processor in here, which is an ARM chip, something that is traditionally reserved for tablets driven by mobile operating systems. Here we have a 10th gen Intel Ice Lake CPU, which is generally in basically every Ultrabook on the market. So in terms of pricing, that's the next thing that I'll get to, but PC, not a PC. This is, a complete fake out. It's a head fake, as they say. Looks better than the Surface Pro, but the reality is that I wish we had, and this is what you're going to see with most reviews, the internals from the Surface Pro 7 inside of this chassis and this new redesign. And I think this is really just a taste of what we're going to be seeing soon. But I'll get into performance. Let's talk about pricing while I do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'll reopen Chrome so that we have a fresh tab. And I'll tell you right now, $1,000, $999 for the base configuration of the Pro X, $799 for the base configuration of the Pro 7. I believe that's the lowest price point they have. This is the Core i5 with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage. And as I just mentioned, this is the base configuration, which has 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. Now, no micro SD card slot on here, so no storage expansion. So if you do fall into this trap, be sure you fall into the right trap with the right amount of storage. I don't know who on earth is buying the configuration with 16 gigs of RAM for $17.99, but there are jerks out there, right? So let's go ahead and just start off with some general browsing. I'll start off with the Red Zone, a little NFL news, and both of these for web browsing are perfectly fine. Where you're going to hit the wall, and this is actually loading up a little bit more slowly, which is interesting. I think they're both set to performance. Let me make sure. Yep, they are. I know this one is. Yep, both are. So that's the first thing you'll notice. Let me make this full screen. And what I can tell you is that the display on the Pro X is better. But again, because we're working with that ARM Qualcomm chip, I don't care what Microsoft said about its performance, you cannot run all of the software that you would expect to on a traditional Windows Intel-driven machine. And that's because the Qualcomm, the ARM platform, does not support 64-bit applications. So right out of the box, this is kind of a turd. Know that. I mean, I could have said that at the top of the video, but if you made it this far, you deserve to know. Turd, not a turd. This looks better, as I've stated. 13-inch display, it's brighter. I think it's a better display overall, but it's not a computer. This is really an iPad Pro competitor. I won't even say Galaxy Tab S6 because they're going after people who buy the iPad Pro, no question about it. The 13-inch form factor, it's slimmed down, but it's still a heavy tablet. This is a heavy tablet at 1.7 pounds, but it's a PC. This, as I've mentioned, is a fake out. This is a head fake. You need to know that. Now, pinch to zoom works beautifully on both of these machines. No problems with that. Opening up anything, I'll go ahead and any Giants news. I think Evan Ingram is hurt, which, what's new, pussycat? Let's go ahead and open that up simultaneously. A little bit slower on the Surface Pro 7, but again, we have a real computer here. So while this is fine for web browsing, things of that nature, the fact that it's limited to what you can run on this Qualcomm SQ1 platform, whereas the Surface Pro 7 has no limitations. You can run any software that Windows 10, that can be run on the on the platform. But what you will run into is, of course, performance issues, because this is not a powerhouse. This is a compromise. I mean, this is a fanless machine that does everything, but doesn't do everything particularly well. It depends on what you're trying to do. This, on the other hand, you can't do everything and then be limited by its capability. You're literally limited at point of sale. So, a nicer piece of hardware. I like the new keyboard, even though it's not much different, it's just larger. And then, of course, we have, the inclusion of the new pen, which I also happen to like a lot, and I assume this is the pen type we're going to be seeing on the next generation. And that's a good thing. It does a good job, at least from what I've seen thus far. Open up a little sketch here. And, I was just messing around. You can tell that it's like an 8-year-old drew that. But it works well. I'm not ready to give you an inking impression on this, but performance seems about as good as it can get for the N-Trig tech that Microsoft employs. But that's kind of where things end, because even when it comes to battery life, these are too close. And I think the whole pitch of this machine was that battery life was going to exceed what you have with the Surface Pro, not be around the same. Microsoft is claiming 14 hours. It's more like 8 to 9. And that's where we kind of sit also with the Surface Pro 7. So I see absolutely no reason on earth to recommend this. I feel like it's just something that people are going to be attracted to because of its design, its form factor. And, if all you do is plan to web browse and you're never going to put software on here that won't be able to run, I still can't imagine spending this amount of money. Here, it's already expensive, but at least it's justified at the end of the day. Here, on the other hand, it's never going to be justified. Let's go ahead and open up YouTube, give you a quick taste of that. Again, you're not going to be blown away. Speakers are louder here, same exact orientation. Screen is better here, but we kind of knew that already. So let's get a 4K sample. I'll do it side by side. Again, even if I tell you to have appropriate expectations, the pricing of this machine is nearly the same as this. I mean, $11.99, $9.99, and that doesn't include this keyboard pen combo, which is $270. Here it's $160, another $100 for the pen. Guess what? Same. It's a wash. You can buy a cheaper version of this, of course. You can do that. You can get the $130 type cover that doesn't have this finish material, but that's it. Let's take a look at that video. Let's go with Costa Rica. And bear with me here as I'm waiting. Surface Pro 7 seems to be hanging a little bit, and it is. Not sure why it's hanging. Here I'm giving it such a heavy endorsement, and it's going to fail me on camera, huh? It's always possible, right? Let's just okay that. I'm not sure why. Let me make sure they're on the same network. They are. Oops. That's a little odd. This is still taking some time. I'm actually, for the benefit of this review, because I haven't noticed anything here, I'm going to go ahead and disconnect that, reconnect that, and make sure that everything is proper, because I don't want anyone to walk away thinking that the SQ1 outperforms the Surface Pro 7, because that's complete crap. And you can see that. So apparently there was some kind of network issue. By the way, this does not support Wi-Fi 6. This does, so if you care about future-proofing your Wi-Fi performance, this is the machine to go with yet again. There's really virtually zero advantage to the Pro X. And that's why I'm not sure what Microsoft was thinking with this. So let's do these one at a time. Surface Pro 7, volume all the way up. Yes, brightness all the way up. Take a look and listen. I'll take a sip of a drink. And I'm going to stop that there. That is in 4K, even though the display is not 4K. Now let's jump over to this machine that seems promising. Volume was not all the way up. Now it is. But it just seems much louder. Both of them are 3:2 aspect ratios, which means letterbox. Not a big fan of that. So basically, the conclusion here is that the Pro X, from a hardware perspective, at least, you know, the aesthetic, what it looks like, of course, it's a nicer machine, no question about it. I like everything about it, except for the fact that I can't really like it because it's not a PC. And if I'm looking for a tablet, I don't have a big reason to forego a tablet, one of these, a Tab S6. I'll include the iPad Pro, even though I would never buy that in a million years. It has an ecosystem built around it because of the number of people that have bought into that. This doesn't have that. Now, a year from now, the story could be different. I think that Microsoft will have a lot of applications that will run on this because it's clear they're back at it and they want to go heavy on an investment in getting ARM to run Windows. It's doable, but it will take Microsoft. It absolutely will, and developers, of course. I don't think it's rethinking the wheel. This, on the other hand, is a product ready to go today. It may not be as sexy is not the right word, but you know what I mean. It may not be new hardware. It may not have a larger screen. I wish that Microsoft would have made this the new Surface Pro 7, but we have what we have here, which is an incomplete product and a complete one that unfortunately is too much like previous generations when it comes to the look and feel, and that's not going to make people upgrade in spite of the new processing power, which is robust. Beyond that, this does have an LTE connection so you could drop a SIM card in there. You can get gigabit speeds. It's the only device on the market to be able to do that, which is really impressive. But again, I feel like it's speaking to the fact that it's only good for content consumption, email, office documents. You're never going to run Adobe on, I mean, not right now, you're not. As of today, November 7, you are not running Adobe on here. No Photoshop, no Premiere. Here you can do all of that. Will it run perfectly? No, but it will run. Here, you hit the wall. And that is why, if this were priced at around even $700, come in at $650, this comparison would be different, because I would be saying that even though this is gimped, it's priced accordingly. That's not the case. This is actually as expensive as most of the Surface Pro models. In fact, it starts at a higher price point, has a bigger screen, nicer design, although I still think the design is kind of crap. But I think that I don't think Microsoft has done much in the way of design with the Surface Pro line. I think the Surface Studio is beautiful. I think that the Surface Book is really nice. But the Pro and now the Pro X, kind of the same design. It's just a little bit bigger in terms of height, thinner. We have less bezels. It still doesn't compare to what other manufacturers are doing these days. And when it comes to I/O, that's the other thing I'm going to talk about quickly. And also we've got a 4K webcam, which we don't hear. Go figure that out. Whoops. You can see it's a bigger machine, but in terms of the profile, so we have proprietary charging port, and then nothing on the top, whereas the Surface Pro 7 is all about having the power button volume rocker up there. You can see them side by side in terms of thickness. You know, they're not that far apart. I mean, this idea that this is so much sexier, I fail to see that, really. And then on this side, we've got our Type-C ports on the Pro X. Here, nothing at all except for the headphone jack. Volume rocker right there on the Pro X. The kickstand is, obviously the same on both. And as I mentioned, no SD card slot, but you do have, of course, upgradability. That's the only thing I will say for this, is that the Pro X also is a signal not only that Microsoft is turning to ARM, and I do think we're going to see more ARM products from them. I think this is the beginning, not the end. But the other thing is that this is actually upgradable, repairable. This is not. And that tells you something about where they're trying to go with this. The fact, I mean, whether it's for corporate customers as well, we may end up seeing a lot of these as point-of-sale machines, in stores, commercial application. But I can't recommend this to anyone. Again, if you want to overpay for a large Windows tablet that really is a Windows 10 machine that can't be a Windows 10 machine, that's what this appears to be. The Pro 7 is a computer. So that's where I leave it. They're both fingerprint magnets. This one only comes in one color. The Pro 7, you have some flexibility with options. Here, this is it. So while I like the Pro X a lot, the Pro 7 all day long, folks. One is a computer. One is, as I've said, a complete head fake that will only fool people who are fools, or people that don't read reviews or watch reviews like the one I'm doing right now. If you stay educated, you will not make a pro mistake. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.